Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of the Saturday Morning D&D Show. My name is Jordan. Lucian is making some sandpaper with his hands there, and that threw me off. So, Lucian, you're my co-host. How's it going?
Good, it's my Mr. Miyagi.
Yes.
Daniel-san.
Daniel-san. Oh, that's
it.
a great movie. Like,
I love it.
I haven't seen that in a while. I should rewatch it.
You should check out the Netflix show because they brought it back and it's good.
Yeah, is it Netflix or is it YouTube?
It was on YouTube for the first season.
Yeah.
And it was so good, Netflix bought it, gave them a second and a third season. So either the third season's coming out soon or the fourth season, and it's good.
Really?
I love it.
Okay, I don't know. I'll have to check it out.
The reason I did it even because I had a dream last night that I was in the fourth season, like I was part of it somehow, and I was like, "Yes, we're beating bullies up." That's the whole premise of the show.
Fantastic. We have a lot to talk about.
We do.
Because and I guess Jordan needs to issue an apology to the fans of Saturday Morning D&D, where he always said they'll never do spelljammer, never ever, not in 100 million years.
Never do it.
We are apparently we got an unearthed arcana that had a lot of spelljammer-esque races, which is kind of interesting, and nothing specifically spacefaring. Like, there weren't rules for this. This was just races. But the addition of the GIF and the Thri-Kreen and things like that. But most importantly, we have to ask, what is your background, Sir Lucian, as people in chat are dying to know?
Oh, my background. Oh, this is a homage. I was like, was there a background in the UA article? I'm like going back to look at it. This is my desktop. And it is No Man's Sky because you can see the little triangle over my head, which is the starships and the space stations and the ship going up in the sky. And it was a creative rendition for No Man's Sky artwork. And I thought it was awesome for Spelljammer Confirmed. We could play a whole campaign that's basically like No Man's Sky now. We can go to millions and millions of planets and travel the universe and galaxies and multiverses and do it all.
Man.
So,
and that game got a lot better as it went on.
I'm playing it right now. They've got a new expedition out, and it's like it gives you, like, the game is about, you can do whatever you want, so you make up your own goals and typical stuff, but then they do an expedition during the seasons that say, hey, if you want set goals that you want to go to, here's these things we'll do, and we'll set it up. So then you can be like, oh, okay, I'll do the expedition. They want me to go collect 10 of these, and they want me to go build this thing. So it's like a mission
for the month or something.
Yeah, it gives you stuff to do. Yeah. So I'm liking it. I'm enjoying it. I love to get back into it. It's still a beautiful game to me. I've loved it from beginning to end. I've never been somebody who didn't like I liked it the day it released, and I've loved it till today.
Yeah,
and
you don't have to lie to make friends. We're all here.
Hey,
so
nobody liked it. Everybody hated it. I was the only one saying.
That's why I'm saying.
I was the only one saying it was good, and I was saying Spelljammer Confirmed, but everybody was poo-pooing me, Jordan. Everybody.
So we have this Unearthed Arcana, and I'm going to bring it up here, and it's playtest material. That's what Unearthed Arcana, but it says Travelers of the Multiverse.
A word we've heard a lot. Multiverse has been used a ton in the last month.
The last month or two. And all it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different races.
Yeah.
The Astral Elf, which is elves that branch. It's always about elves that branch off, like the Eladrin were the elves that branched off. But elves that left the Feywild and lived in the astral plane, and you don't age in the astral plane. So these elves are like thousands upon thousands of years old. And because of that, the astral plane has like permeated their body and given them special astral elf powers. But seems like a really good Vulcan kind of race, I think. We'll see for Spelljammer. The Auto Gnome, which is a mechanical gnome gifted with free will.
So this is our R2-D2.
And it's a construct. So it has that. It's not a humanoid. It's not a fey creature. It's a construct. So certain things like cure wounds won't work on this, which is interesting. And gnomes play a big part in Spelljammer. There's lots of tinkering gnomes. They're always building things. They have their own ships and stuff like that. So that kind of fits. because I don't think they would need to remake the rock gnome like from the thing. They just tweak it a little bit so you're not like in forests and stuff, but you're, you know.
Yeah. So you still have rock gnomes out there, but they also have an auto gnome, which I guess you can play the auto gnome, but it also kind of implies that a rock gnome can create these as companions or whatever. So you might even have a ship of rock gnomes that have part of the crew as auto gnomes that help them out or something.
No, exactly. And this also made me think of being a lot of old school essentials in BX D&D lately, and they have the recruitments that you get, and you can like go and get hirelings and have them work for you and things like that. And I feel like if I was a gnome and I could pick up this auto gnome companion that runs around with me, kind of a thing. And then how funny is it when your main character dies and then your auto gnome has to like pick up the sword and carry on your ideas and stuff. The GIF, which are the hippo-headed...
Quintessential.
Very Spelljammer, 100%. And the GIF are they're in the monster manual, or they're one of them, like Volos or something, as a monster. So they've been hinted at here and there.
Like hippo-like, if you don't know.
They're very muscular and tall. They're anthropomorphic hippos, basically. And cool they're uniforms. Very military. Like they're the strategy, and I always liked that about it. The one in the for 5th edition has a bunch of military medals and stuff, and a big. It's
like Napoleonic, almost like uniforms they wear. Yeah. They're big into uniforms, so I love it.
The Haduzi, which is another Spelljammer race, straight up.
I was wondering how you're going to pronounce that.
I pronounce it Haduzi, but I don't know. Like it's a Haduzi of a word. Don't get me wrong.
It is tough.
But the Haduzi are like gorilla or ape-like creatures.
They said simian.
They have wings, but they're not real wings. They're like, I don't know, like little membranes, kind of like flying squirrels. And they fly around. And actually, if you go to my main channel, I made a couple of videos on races from earlier editions, and I wonder if we'll see them in 5th edition. And the Haduzi was one of them that we talked about.
I mean, flying monkeys from The Wizard of Oz. How can you go wrong with that?
Well, there you go. The one I'm most excited for is the Plasmoid, which is an amoeba-like being. And I don't think that's in Spelljammer. But we'll talk about it. Is in Star Frontiers, which is something I want to talk about.
And we wanted it in Jordan's campaign as a personal request from Lucian.
Yeah. And then the Thri-Kreen, which are a 6-limbed telepathic insectoid that I always think of as from Dark Sun. But Thri-Kreen are very prevalent in
before they got
as well.
there. Yeah.
Because it just makes sense.
Like?
So. They're kind of like praying mantises. I think they have, they definitely have 4 arms. I don't think they have 4 legs. Maybe they do, depending on the art. I don't remember. But they're an insectoid telepathic
in the
race.
UA article.
So,
but,
and they're your cool bug race.
Telepathy.
Yeah. So something interesting with this is we're getting away from ability scores. So they're just like, you can take whatever you want.
2, 1, right? You put 2 in one and 1 in another.
2 in one, 1 in another, or 1 in 3, and things like that. But they are expanding the rules of creature type. So some of these are, and we've done this before, where we had the satyr was a fae, the centaur was a fae, but now the plasmoid is an ooze. Yeah. The auto gnome is a construct, and
Thri-Kreen's a monstrosity.
Is it the Thri-Kreen is a monstrosity?
Thri-Kreen is a monstrosity.
Yeah. So, I mean, very interesting. Certain spells only work on humanoids. And so to have that, I don't know. It's cool. I think it's cool. And I think it's a good direction for D&D to go, because even Gary Gygax was saying, like, no, you want to play a dragon? Play a dragon. Here's the monster stat block. Like, he was very, like, we made this. There might not be a system for leveling up as a dragon or something, but if your friend wants to jump in and play a dragon, like, there you go. Yeah. And so I kind of like that. Thought it would be fun. I do like the idea of a plasmoid wild shape druid who you literally just shape your body into whatever new monster you're playing. Not magically, but like... And so you still look slimy. You've just taken on like a bear shape. I thought that was kind
I've always thought that whole idea of just being like a sentient... gelatinous cube that decides, like, the whole storyline would be you meet a party and you spare them. Like, you come across them on a camping and you just, like, whatever happens, you guys have that discussion of, I don't really want to kill you, adventurers, and somehow I can communicate. And I become friends with those adventurers, and I leave and go on ventures with them as a gelatinous cube. I just thought that'd be such a cool character to play, or an ooze that could fit in armor, or an ooze that could fit in clothes and tried to fit in using its body like that. And I just thought that was such a fun idea. Now we can do it. We have the rules right here. And
maybe someone in chat can remind me, but I want to say that there was a specific elf race. It was a stray off. Maybe they were like star elves or something. I can't remember. But it feels like that's what the astral elf is supposed to be.
Gotcha.
Is this like ancient elf race that was lost or something?
Because the only other thing we wouldn't have had, or we've already got it before this, that would definitely have shown up in this had it not shown up so far, is the Githyanki and the Mind Flayers. Because in Spelljammer, that was the big war that's going on out in the Spelljammer universe. Is they're out there hunting down Mind Flayers everywhere they can find them, and and they have their quintessential ships that they're using, and they're fighting each other, and that's just, but we already got it, right? And I think I was with you until I saw the Baldur's Gate intro movie.
Oh, the Baldur's Gate
that actually had the ship, and that was the moment I said, they're doing it. It's no longer just a joke, and they're doing it.
People have been talking about it, and I didn't really think about this because I'm like, well, it's a funny joke, like whatever. But it's getting to the point where it's like fans are clamoring for it so much because it's been a joke that I'm like, you have to do it now. Like, it's one of those things where I'm like, you guys can't just like, perpetuate this funny joke and be like, yeah, we all know Spelljammer confirmed. Anyway, here's Dragonlance. So it kind of makes sense that they're not going to, make people angry. And the hype behind this is just getting
Twitter
crazy.
Blew up.
Like, people are
Twitter
like, what?
Blew up.
So Twitter totally blew up.
It's funny.
It's really
fun. Or mine did. Maybe that's because I just look at D&D Twitter people, but I don't know. Mine was just scroll after scroll of, Spelljammer confirmed, pictures of Spelljammer. Everybody was kind of psyched about the whole UA article coming out, and the name of it, Travelers of the Multiverse. And, Nerd Immersion's been doing video after video after video on it. So, it's pretty big if he's doing 2 or 3 or 4 videos on it.
So anyway, really cool. I'm excited for this. Obviously, I really like Spelljammer.
I think we should do a campaign.
People were, well, if it comes out, I think I have to. But now, some of the speculation is that they're going to try and combine Planescape and Spelljammer, and that maybe this is something, I don't want to say new, but just like the overarching theory of the universe and everything, like how it all works together, because they were very different. Spelljammer had its crystal spheres and you flew through phlogiston and stuff, and Planescape was like, we didn't really explain the prime material planes so much as the extraplanar areas and how they all fit together. But they're very keen on multiverse, and it made me think of Chris Perkins a while ago explained that they handle their Wizards of the Coast intellectual properties, like characters like Drist and things like that, like Marvel does with theirs. Yeah. And Marvel's been on a big multiverse kick where it's like, well, we can really tell any story with any actor now, The Rock could play Iron Man, and people would love it because it's an alternate world where Dwayne Johnson is Iron Man, and it's hilarious. So people will be like, that's awesome. And I wonder if they're going to do a similar thing with this, where it's like, no, everybody's campaign world, everything is all part of some big multiverse, and Spelljammer is going to be the way of going back and forth. Spelljammers are piloted by magic, but you have to funnel that magic through something called a helm, and the helm is basically a large chair that you sit in. Spoilers for your game, but there is a helm in Dungeon of the Mad Mage. And
we're getting it.
You can attune to it and you can actually use it. So they've been hinting at this. And then there was a crashed Nautiloid ship in Icewind Dale. So this now, with this UA out, going back, it feels like this is very set up. In retrospect, looking back, you're like, okay, yeah, they've been dangling this carrot for a while. So I'm excited.
Disney, just to go back to your Marvel example there, which I fully jump on board. On Disney, they've been doing the What If animated show with all of the Marvel characters, where Peggy Carter becomes Captain America, or Captain Carter, and
what if she got the serum to become the super soldier?
Instead of Star-Lord, you get T'Challa gets taken up into space, and he becomes one of the Guardians of the Galaxy. You get Party Thor. What happens if Thor never grows up and learns responsibility? Like they've been doing all these shows, and what happens if Doctor Strange reaches too far for too much power? They show that kind of arc. And then they just had their finale, which was the Watcher brought individual people into it to save the multiverse, because Ultron, eventually got the stones and was destroying all universes that he could find. He was going out and taking out life in all multiverses, and he needed to be stopped. So that was like a perfect, that allows you such creative freedom to then redo anything down the road. And it allows your fans, what I think is really cool, is to say that your campaign world can fit in a multiverse. And Spelljammer, they could even just say, in this universe over here, Spelljammer exists, but in this universe, this multiverse over here is where Planescape is. And this multiverse over here is no space at all, and it's just Forgotten Realms, or it's core Earth stuff, or it's just whatever it wants to be. And your campaigns can fit, your worlds can fit, Eberron can fit, everything can fit, because it's a multiverse, and they don't have to necessarily connect to each other, but some maybe can. And then you get all your Magic the Gathering worlds in there. You get anything else. Maybe they want to go to a whole nother. If they do a new IP, but it's still Wizards of the Coast, because you have Magic the Gathering, you have all the Dungeons and Dragons campaigns. They could create a new one that's none of those, right? A whole new universe of things. And it's just a third IP that they throw out there that becomes super popular and whatever. It becomes, Transformers, or, they come up with Voltron or something just crazy. And it'd be cool. I think that's great. And creatively, I think it releases their artists to really go wild. They're not pigeonholed into stuff.
And yeah, that's super interesting. I actually want to touch more on the idea of new stuff that they're creating. So hold on to that. But I do want to point out, before we transition away from Spelljammer, is that in 1982, TSR came out with a game, a science fiction role-playing game, using the mechanics of D&D called Star Frontiers. And I want to thank Zris in chat was like, hey, are you going to talk about AJ Pickett's theory on Star Frontiers? And I'm like, I'm not aware of this, but let's go look. But it has a lot of less fantasy, obviously. It's not Spelljammer in the same sense. But I want to talk about these races that you can play. The Darlacites are short gray amoeba-like creatures that are multicellular amoebas that can change their body, blah, 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 create pseudopods. The Vrusk are an insectoid race. They kind of look like ants with mandibles. The Yazirin are arthropods similar to terrestrial apes. So a lot of this is like, okay. And there are some others here that didn't really fit the mold, but I thought that was interesting. Is maybe Wizards of the Coast own Star Frontiers. What they're doing with it, they're like probably tapping it for resources. And so.
Yeah. Because I think what ended up happening back in those 80s is D&D comes out and you realize you can play a role-playing game that isn't a war game anymore. It's not about units moving around. It's not about armies clashing or redoing history so much, or even a space battle, if you were into that. It was about, I can play this specific smuggler, or I can play this specific starfighter, or I can play this guy who walks around that has this cool light sword and can move things with his mind, right? So you're right in that area where I could play a Jedi at that point. And you're like, so I think a lot of the companies see Dungeons and Dragons works. You can play as a knight, you can play as a wizard, you can play as an elf, you can play as a dwarf. But there are so many people that aren't necessarily fantasy fans, but still can take that same thing and say, well, I'm a fan of this thing. I'm a Star Trek fan. I'm a Star Wars fan. I want to take what you guys are doing, but I want to do it with Star Wars or Star Trek or whatever. So these companies started putting out, science fiction based RPGs quickly, and then future RPGs, and then, Armageddon RPGs. What happens after World War III RPGs, and what happens when everything gets smashed together? Oh, we'll call that riffs, and what happens if you go back in time? There's, RPGs for that and stuff. So I think it explodes from there. And it just makes sense that TSR has to have theirs. We need Star Frontiers. We can't let somebody own that space. Like Wizards of the Coast has let kind of the only one that's out there, Starfinder from Paizo, own that space. Like, they're the quintessential role-playing game company right now, and they don't really have a sci-fi version. Unless you count Eberron.
Yeah.
They just let that space go.
Wizards doesn't have like a true sci-fi, but I would disagree with you. There are lots of sci-fi RPGs out there. So
yes, there's a ton, but Wizards of the Coast, the big gorilla or the big fish in the pond, or whatever analogy you want to use, they could have owned that space just like they own the fantasy space. They're the number one top dog in the fantasy space. They could have also been the number one top dog in the sci-fi space if they wanted to, but they just let it go. They just didn't want to do it. So that allowed these other companies, and I love that because Modifius can do it, and Free League can do it, and all these other good companies can come in and say, well, we'll give you Star Trek Adventures, or we'll give you Aliens, or we'll give you, Starfinder, we'll give you, Grimmer Space, or we'll give you all these other different ones. I think that's cool. But now they're coming, I think with this book, maybe they're making a step into it. Do you think they will go the route or as hard in to this portion of their game like Pathfinder has Pathfinder and Starfinder now, and they are big pillars for their company? It's not just one book add-on, right? And then they went all back to Pathfinder. Starfinder is a big size, multiple 32 books, moving to second edition, adventure pass galore. It's a fully fledged, fully supported product, not just a one-off book. Do you think Wizards will do that?
No, I don't think their team
I don't think they will either.
Big enough to support like an adventure path for two like main big books. The Icewind Dales, the Out of the Abyss.
You're putting like 4 new books out a year, 4 to 6. Would they do that with, like Spelljammer?
No, I think this would be like Eberron. And so it's like, here's your Eberron book. Here's how to do Eberron adventures. Now, community, go make us DMsGuild Eberron adventures, or play something else. I think it'll be like that, in all honesty, unless it just gets really popular, and then they're like, okay.
I think they're missing the boat.
But they're very set on those like 4 to 5 books a year. And I don't, but now my brain's going a mile a minute. I was like, but the Forgotten Realms train is coming to a close. I think we're gonna get a finalization of that storyline that they've kind of been intertwining all these different stories on the Sword Coast, and then maybe new books will be more like Van Richten's Guide, where it's like, here's a little summary of different places in the realms, or here's this, and then they'll do a similar thing for Spelljammer or what have you. I'm curious though if this is going to be like a new campaign setting, which means that I need to buy is this going to be something that I have to buy a Spelljammer player's handbook for, and a Spelljammer Dungeon Master's Guide that's got rules that help me play space adventures? Much like the box set, where it's really you just needed the box set to play. Mm-hmm. Or do I need the player's handbook? Do I need the monster manual?
Yeah.
So is it going to be separate, or is it going to be all encompassing play how you want. So
I think Paizo has the better idea, but I think Wizards of the Coast could do it better than Paizo does it. Like, their books are easier to read and use than Pathfinder's books are. They're a little bit harder to get into. You have to really dig in to figure out how you're making your character, and there's a lot of rules in there. You got to find them. But I think it's a better idea to have multiple product lines that you can almost double your output. You could have 2 teams dedicated to it and just really putting out books for this ravenous community you have. They will buy $50 books month after month after month for these.
But that was the problem they did with 4th edition. So, like, you're basically saying you need to repeat the 4th edition model, and I don't think they want to do that at all. So.
Well, no, it still can be all based on 5th edition. It still can be based on...
It was all based on 4th edition when they were pumping out book after book after book, but the amount of books they put out, and the faster they put out books, the more problems they had. And I will say that these books, even though they've been doing it a lot slower, still have problems.
I disagree, Jordan. No? That's it. It's a fight. No, this is what I think. I think they put out too many books when their community was too small and too condensed. It's, I don't know, 10 times bigger than it's ever been. And I think you can put out more books now because your community is much larger. So that capacity to put out books that, because a Wildlight is going to appeal to some of your community, but not all of your community. And a Strixhaven is going to appeal to a certain part of your community. The problem before is their pool of community people was so small, and they were putting out so many books. It was just like they were just trying to get money from the same small group. Now it's millions and millions of fans that want to play different types of adventures. So you can put out a lot more books now, I think, and not have that problem. But you're always going to get rule creep. I mean, I don't know how many books we're at right now, and people might, that's why I always thought 6th edition might be coming, because we're hitting book creep right now, right? We're getting book after book after book. The system hasn't really changed in 9 years for the most part. So I don't know. I think it's because of popularity is why I think they should do more. But Paizo's doing it, and their popularity is not going down. And I haven't heard complaining that, wow, Paizo, just keep putting out more books, you're ruining your games.
No, I haven't heard that either, but
I've heard it's getting more and
they're
more
also
popular.
not making the kind of money that, like,
probably not.
I want to see Paizo's. Okay, this is what I want. Is Wizards of the Coast and D&D is very popular.
Mm-hmm.
So can we say the rising tide is raising all of the boats? Like, is Paizo getting raised by D&D? Is Modiphius getting raised up?
I think so.
And I disagree. I think people are buying Wizards of the Coast, and I think, like, they're doing really well, and I think everyone else is like, well, RPGs are popular, but, like, they really just, I don't think everyone's getting lifted up by Wizards of the Coast. I think Wizards of the Coast is. And so I would be curious if Hasbro, if Wizards of the Coast has doubled their revenue every year for the past, like, 4 years now because of 5th edition, can you go to Paizo and see that Paizo's revenue has doubled every year? And I don't think it has. Which then
I don't think everybody's been as successful as they have been, but I think they have gained benefits from them being so much popular because they brought the whole community up at the same time. It brought in more people willing to look at other books and other stuff. And I'm for sure you don't get Invisible Sun if RPGs are not at its Renaissance level of communities out there. You don't get a box set that's a couple of $100 that people are willing to pay in a Kickstarter that goes through the roof unless the hobby itself has gotten really popular. It can't be a small niche group and you get crazy stuff like that.
That's a bad example, though.
Beatles and Grimms.
Invisible Sun was made for a small niche group, and like
it was, but it wouldn't have even succeeded had it not been. Because they didn't succeed necessarily off of Numenera's success.
Yeah, they built a company off of Numenera's success.
Right. But I think the whole hobby itself has become even more popular, which made it possible.
Okay. I don't know. I think all of these companies, and Monte Cook's a good example, where they're making more 5th edition material now. And I noticed that a lot of the Paizo stuff comes out for this is compatible with Pathfinder and 5e, is they're not selling their cool adventures and stuff to Well, they realize that if they just put a 5e stamp on it, they'll make more money. So that to me doesn't mean that people are flocking to Paizo or people are flocking to Monty Cook. They're flocking to 5e material, which again is because Wizards has that monopoly almost. So
right, but I think that's a marketing thing where if you say if we notice pink covered books sell twice as good as any other book, everybody starts putting out pink covered books.
That was like apes on comic books back in the day or something.
Yeah,
like the pulp
yeah,
comics.
whatever
like,
it
monkeys
was,
sell it,
yeah.
but sell comics.
So now you put 5e on something right now, currently today, and it sells like hotcakes.
And
I
think that's.
So I think a marketing person will do that no matter what, no matter how their company's doing, whether they're doing well or not. I think Modifius is doing great. Look at all the lines. You can't be doing really well and get those IPs to be able to purchase Conan, be able to purchase Star Trek, to be able to purchase Aliens. To be able to purchase those IPs, you've got to be doing pretty well.
Yeah.
So I think they are doing well. Now, are they doing Wizards of the Coast well? Probably not, but who is at this point? Who's getting there? Maybe Pathfinder's getting there. Who knows? Like, how would we know?
Well, yeah, I guess. I don't know if it's a publicly traded company, so I don't know. But
hey, everybody out there, find out if they're publicly traded. Then
but
we can find out.
Yeah, I guess I mean,
I get it.
I will look at numbers, and I want to
Sure.
talk numbers. I think that's cool, but I have a feeling that those companies, if they were really doing like amazing because everybody loved RPGs, then they would be selling the Alien RPG hand over fist. They would be selling Pathfinder hand over fist. But instead of selling those things hand over fist and cultivating their own group, they're making 5e stuff now because that's what's selling is 5e. It's not like, I don't think people are just like, I'm going to rush out and grab the new Paizo thing. They're like, oh, this looks like a cool adventure for that game that I'm already playing. And they buy it.
What about Avatar?
That is true. And that is a little different.
It is not 5e.
Because that has a different fan base behind it. But you're right. Yeah.
But it is huge. Like different fan base, but not, it's still all.
No, I think the fan base of like, I want an RPG, but I also like Avatar. They were the ones that were really excited for it, and they you had them at Avatar RPG. That's all they wanted. Wizards of the Coast was never going to make that, so they got excited this way. But yeah, if Modifius had that, and they would be doing just as popular, I think. So I don't know. I agree. Yeah, that was a huge, the highest grossing RPG
over any 5e product.
So
beat Critical Role.
No, it didn't.
Yeah, I thought they did more than Critical Role.
No. Yes. I'm looking it up.
Then their book? Yeah, no, I'm not talking about their animated show.
Oh, their animated show. Yeah. That
I'm talking about their book.
What book did they make?
Did they do the first one?
Was that kickstarted? Tal'Dorei?
I thought so.
Well, if it was, that was like early Kickstarter numbers. So
I feel like it was.
I think it was published by Green Ronin or something.
Yeah. Maybe I'm thinking of the different one then. I don't know. Look at the numbers. Let's go find the numbers.
Sorry, everybody. I'm sorry that your parents are fighting live on TV.
You gotta have a good fight. Yeah. You gotta have a disagreement.
Star Frontiers, moving forward. You were talking about creating a new IP and creating new stuff and adding to that multiverse.
Yeah.
A little book came out on the DMsGuild by Wizards of the Coast called Minx and Boo's Journal of Villainy. Mm-hmm. And this was a book or a PDF, but you can get a print on demand. And it's specifically tied to Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, maybe 3. I haven't really played 3. 3's not done all the way either.
Well, in the comics, right?
Huh?
In the comics?
Yeah, the comics, the characters, and all the stuff. So the world that James Olin, who is the lead designer behind a lot of those Baldur's Gate games, Neverwinter Nights and things like that, he is very tied to the realms, and he wanted to create, like, here are the characters that I've been playing with, and so he built a PDF, and it's sanctioned by Wizards of the Coast. Like, it says, like, hey, we published this. All the proceeds go to Extra Life, which is really cool. It's pretty professionally done, and although it was made in like May 2021, according to like the dates of the PDF, but they released it, last Wednesday. If you're interested, I did a review on it. I really like it, but it has a lot of mechanics on how to play a game in the Forgotten Realms that's not a published adventure. So, like, how do you get the big bad evil guy? Well, we're going to pick Mephistopheles, and he's going to control this, and you can kind of puzzle piece this pyramid for your players to, like, climb up and figure out, like, oh, this clue leads here. It's really cool, and it's got some information on certain cities that we haven't really, basically, like, Athkatla and another one that has a lot of information about the city that you can play in. Where I'm going with this is I wanted to talk about James Olin, who was working for BioWare as his video game designer, and he was doing all this stuff, and he left to create Archetype Entertainment under Wizards of the Coast to develop new intellectual property. Then he writes this and comes out with this, and it makes me wonder if, like, this was, hey, James, you've never written a supplement for D&D before, but could you try and use something you already know, like, I don't know, Baldur's Gate 2 stuff. We want you to write this, make it look all professional. We'll help you. And then now that you have that idea, we want you to use those skills to build a new book, a new IP for D&D 5e. I don't know. That I was putting that together this morning, and I was kind of like, I wonder if that's what this was. If the Mints and Boozed Journal of Villainy is the test run for him to get his feet wet on actually building something. And then they could put it out there, donate it to charity, and people are happy, but at the same time, you're like, oh. And I mean, he made Star Wars The Old Republic, Knights of the Old Republic, Dragon Age Origins. Like, he did a lot of the design on these things that I love, you know.
Yeah, so. That's a great, cool world. Dragon Age was a cool world.
Mm-hmm. So, and I mean, I say lead designer, there's always a group of people that are working on this, but specifically for Baldur's Gate, when BioWare had it in Baldur's Gate 2 and Neverwinter Nights, he worked on those as lead designer. So, it's interesting. So anyway, James Olin is one of the head writers for this Minx and Booze Journal of Villainy. I really like it. I think it's awesome. I think you guys should check it out. You too, Lucian. It's got some cool stuff in there.
Sounds cool.
There's a couple, like, CR27 monsters and stuff in there that, like, could be really fun for some high level characters.
Very cool. Yeah, that's like Bahamut level.
So I don't know. Thoughts on that? I guess. I mean, do you think that we know that they're building a new IP? And they probably, like you said, want to incorporate it into their multiverse of whatever. So just like they are with Magic.
That's the way it explains it. Yeah. Yeah, I could see that. And I definitely could see them trying to use DMsGuild as test ground stuff. Just like UA articles are test ground stuff, for sure. That'd be interesting. And we know the guy's creative, and or it's also one of those things is just to give you a good tie-in to keep your feet in the role-playing tabletop space, but still be a part of the digital community that they're trying to build, because we know they're trying to build a strong digital game presence also. Yeah. They've been talking about that. They've been acquiring, they've been hiring. If you go to their site to see what jobs are open, there's a lot of digital computer game space jobs over there right now, because they're building something that we don't know about. And it's not just what we're getting already with Baldur's Gate or, you know, the some of the other games that have the license of Dungeons and Dragons to use them, mobile game or whatever. They're trying to build some real computer games out there. So I wonder if they're, you know, moving into those, like the CRPG kind of market too, which is those big, you know, Divinity Original Sin kind of games, Baldur's Gate, you know, all those games. I'd love a Neverwinter Night game to come back out. Neverwinter Nights. I mean, that was BioWare, and that game was so good. I'd love to see a resurgence of that come back around.
It was sad. I liked the story in Neverwinter Nights 2, but Neverwinter Nights 1 is it's got to be my favorite PC game. Like, it was so good.
Yeah. So I think it'd be cool. I'm surprised we haven't had books based on those, right? Mm-hmm. More of a Baldur's Gate. We got a little bit of finally a book that was Baldur Gates kind of centric, but they didn't start out that way. Like that story, Descent into Avernus, was not going to start at Baldur's Gate. No. They pigeonholed it later in the production to do that. So I think it's interesting that we have these iconic places that you will see in computer games, but they haven't really done the book versions of those very much. Or I would think you'd want to tie those things together to really bring both communities together in case you have just digital game players and tabletop analog players, right? Whatever you want to call.
And who knows? Maybe with Spelljammer on the way, and you always point out the Nautiloid in Baldur's Gate 3. Like, we need to point out that Baldur's Gate 3 is not finished. Like, it is still early access. And so when that game is completely done, and also I wonder if they could tie it in with, like, at the end of that game, you begin your tabletop journey, you know? And so
I'm going to 100% that game when it's finally released. So everybody keep an eye out for that. For sure.
Yeah, so that's what I wanted to talk about. But let's talk about some Pathfinder Starfinder. You got a lot of Starfinder stuff here on our notes. What's going on?
Yeah, but it's just because there's some books that come out. I was looking at their site just to try to figure out what's coming out right now. So, like, their latest book that came out was Guns and Gears for Pathfinder. You can get that at your bookstores now. What's coming up is a lot of March 2022 release dates, and I'm thinking that's because, just like we learned from Wizards of the Coast, and one of the books that we want is not coming till January, that I think is relevant to the shipping shortage that seems to be keep hitting every major industry that we know of, especially book creation and books coming over from China, publishers or producers,
or
whatever
just
they call it.
There might be, because I know, like, Wizards of the Coast uses problems. American publishers. But those American publishers need paper, and the paper's on a boat in the middle of the Atlantic because they can't get it over here. So everyone's just delayed, and that's just what it is,
Yeah, and it's every industry. I mean, auto industries, gaming industry, whatever is kind of affected. But the book they are getting out that releases in November, so next month, is Tech Revolution for Starfinder. So it's got big mechs and lots of mech play. You've been talking about mech play.
And
kaiju size, smaller size, all kinds of size.
This really intrigued me because I have yet to find a game that does both really well. There's always although the Mecha Hack is really good, and I think you guys should go check that out. Matt Click wrote it. It's a really good system, and I really want to run like a Mecha Hack, like three episode kind of a game. But with Starfinder, you already have a really good system of I am my techno self, or I'm this, and now I can pilot a mech, and there's a whole rule system to make that mech happen. Like, I have yet to see that, and now I just need Universal Century, the RPG, to play my Gundam game in, and I'll be happy. So.
We'll be good. So Tech Revolution is out now. You can find that at your game stores for Starfinder. The one that comes in November, I mixed it up, is Galactic Magic. And that was the big thing they were pushing about. We want to remind everybody that Pathfinder is science fantasy, not science fiction.
Right.
And one is fantasy, one is science fiction. They have a fantasy and a sci-fantasy. So they brought that in. And to even show that in Pathfinder, their Guns and Gears is out. So lots of guns and gears and turrets and cannons and all that kinds of stuff can show up in those. So that's what's out there. Now, here was something that I hadn't even thought of, and I wonder if we've stumbled upon something here. Remember when they said we have new print formats coming out for Dungeons and Dragons, things we've never done before? Do you know what Paizo has that I've never seen Dungeons and Dragons do?
No.
In a print format? Pocket edition sized books.
Oh yeah, that's right. I have the Pocket Pathfinder 1 Game Master Guide. So
smaller size, smaller form factor, easier to carry
fits
around.
in your hand.
I wonder if that's one of the new digital formats they're going to try.
Well, it wouldn't be digital. It would be.
Well, I mean, they called it their new print format.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's one of the new products they would bring out.
It might be
a pocket-sized version of a player's handbook.
That would be
pocket-sized version of Dungeon Master's Guide.
Because if you could half the cost and get players to be like, oh, I'll pick up a $12 like pocket-sized PHB, and then I can carry that around. Yeah,
has all the relevant stuff I need for easier to carry to my convention games, easier to move around to, and just have a cool.
Has the latest rules because how many erratas have come out now?
Yeah, all that stuff's in it. Yeah. So I wonder if that might be one of the types of print we will see.
That would be cool. I would definitely buy that. That would be awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what's coming out for Pathfinder Starfinder. I'm still excited. The more I look into what Paizo's doing and the more artwork I've seen and the more adventure paths they're running, they are really getting my interest. And playing this Pathfinder Righteous has definitely been my gateway drug to say, oh, maybe I do want to try crack cocaine.
Now, are you
want to get into this?
Now, are you going to try? Are you going to read or buy Pathfinder 1, or are you going to try Pathfinder 2?
No, I think I would jump into the newest.
Okay.
Even though there's a million books out there, and I probably would eventually.
Well, and a lot of them are somewhat compatible. They wanted that to be the case. But yeah.
I think I would jump in just like when I took my break from Dungeons and Dragons, which was right during 3.5. I took a big break from any role-playing games, came back a few years later. I saw people were either playing 3.5 or 4, and I was thinking, boy, which one do I want to try to remember? Do I just try to go back and remember 3.5 because it's been so long? Do I try to learn 4? And then I had heard 5 had just come out, right? And I'm thinking, well, you know what? I'm just going to jump right where we're at. Let's go current. So I jumped into 5 and have never looked back because 5 has been my favorite edition. I love nostalgia-wise, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons and Dungeons and Dragons 3.5. Never got to play 4, but 5 is my favorite. I mean, I love the system of 5. I've loved the adventures I've played in 5. I have more stories than I've ever had before in 5. I love it a lot.
No,
it's really good.
It's interesting because something that I don't think that we really talk about, kind of the elephant in the room, is there's nostalgia for older editions, but 5th edition really had a lot of like quality of life improvements. And I've been rereading Old School Essentials, and that is basic D&D, but like when I open up my rule cyclopedia and read the original basic D&D, it's really difficult to understand. I don't really know THAC0, and I don't want to just put it on THAC0, but like the idea of laying out the information clearly wasn't really a concept kind of a thing.
They hadn't got it.
For 5th edition specifically, Wizards really wanted to be like, how should we organize the book to best help people read it and understand it? And the Old School Essentials is the same thing. So here we have Old School Essentials is the same information that's in the rules cyclopedia of basic expert D&D, but Old School Essentials makes it so much easier to understand. And it's like, how is this the same information, but it's presented so much better, you know, or much better, I should say.
Yeah, there is you wouldn't have known it, and I wouldn't have been able to know it until I've seen the 2 versions, like you've just pointed out, that there is a art to laying out and formatting it in certain orders that makes something way easier to use and understand and accessible. That word truly means something to me, accessible, when I saw those 2 versions side by side, because the rules are there and you can do all the same things, but man, you have to go back and forth and you're flipping pages back and you're going, wait a minute, it talked about this one thing 10 pages back. Now I got to flip back over there to remember what that said. Whereas 5e is just, here's this thing, here's this thing, here's this thing. And it's just you're going through it.
I don't want to talk bad about Goodman Games because I love their product, but the DCC core book is very confusing, and I'll flip through it, and I think we'll talk a little bit. I mean, we got 10 minutes left. This is crazy, this conversation, but it's Spelljammer Day. But the game I played last Saturday or Sunday, player had a question, and he's like, I'm on the section about mighty deeds, but I don't understand. And I'm like, oh, you need to go to page like 200. He's like, why is it 100 pages between it's the same information. They should be next to each other. And I'm like, you're right. That's not good design. But but at the time, you know, an author is writing and they're like, I don't know, it makes sense to me, but you have to think outside of the
Yeah.
Like,
I remember
how
you
our
used
other
to have to take,
user interface is kind of a way to do it with a book. It's kind of interesting.
You had to take notes to learn an old RPG game.
Yeah.
Like you had to make your own book using the book they gave you, but reordering it in a way you understood it, that you could finally play it. That was the hurdle of getting into role-playing game. And that is a little bit of where I think the pushback on, and it shouldn't be there, but the gatekeeping happens, because you get those people who are proud that they were able to understand a poorly written and formatted book, but they deciphered it, right? And that's their badge of honor. And they want you to go through that same thing, or you're not a real gamer. You're not playing a real RPG. You're playing, something different. So I think Matt Colville talked about that in a couple of his videos when he was comparing. He did a cool series. Go back and watch Matt Colville's series about, I'm going to make a fighter in this edition, then I'm going to make a fighter in this edition, and then I want to make a fighter in this edition. He talks a lot about just the formatting and the design and how terrible it was. It was really good. So I agree. I agree totally with what you're saying.
Yeah. Zris says in chat, like, older D&D really assumed that you already knew the game. And for 5th edition, they did not make that assumption. And I like that. So,
and I do think D&D 5e book is a training manual. D&D 3 or before was an encyclopedia. It was more of like a reference that you went and tried to find what page you need to be on, and then you flip to it. D&D 5e can be read start to finish, and it's training you from chapter 1 to chapter 2 to chapter 3 to chapter 4 to chapter 5 to be able to play this game. And I think it's more of like the difference between what that is, like a training manual or a reference manual. Those are two different things in reality.
It's funny. Grenar here is saying, like, we had to make cheat sheets for our Shadowrun game. And I'm like, oh my gosh, Shadowrun. That I don't even want to think about how complicated that can get.
It was back when you had to have DM screens. They weren't just to block your dice rolls. They were to have rules, because you didn't have to go back to the book to look them up. And they were so complicated that you wanted them right in front of you with pieces of paper and notes, and to keep this is how grapple works, or this is how charging mounted works, or this other weird stuff. So
I wanted to talk about the Twitch leak a little bit, because that's kind of a big thing. We all know how much Lucian is getting paid on Twitch now. So
we do know. I'm sorry, guys. It's millions of dollars. You guys didn't know it.
But the big thing is that in the last two... So if you don't know this, Twitch got hacked, or somebody internally leaked something. We were kind of talking about it. But a 125 gigabyte torrent file went out onto the web. And it has the chat logs from the beginning of Twitch till now, which is kind of weird to think that they hold on to all that information.
Yeah.
And it also has the revenue from September 2019 to September 2021. So you can see how much they paid out to creators. And I don't know why this was considered a big shock to people. I think a lot of us don't think in the idea of millions of dollars. And I think a lot of people think that their favorite Twitch streamer, their Pokemains and their whatever, their ninjas, they're just like, oh, they're basically like me. They just like to play games. I go to my $10 an hour job. They're just streaming. They're having fun. They're not making $80,000 a month. It's like, but they are, because, and that's not even including brand deals and things like that. Gosh,
I would never thought Critical Role was at the top of that.
But that was what surprised me. Is like that is the epitome of why 5th edition is so popular. I think is Critical Role made the most money in that. Was it the 2-year or just the month? I forget. They were at the very top.
2-year number. I didn't see the other.
Yeah, they were at the very top, and that doesn't include. That's just the payout from that.
That's
Twitch.
Not YouTube.
Yeah,
that's not. Yeah.
And it was close to $9 million, if not over. And they're a business, they're a company. They're actually paying their employees. They're probably creating 401ks and things like that. So I'm not saying they're being greedy by any means, but the pushback for when fans see this and then they get upset that they're their fan base is, it's almost like, well, you're making too much money off of us. And it's like, well, then don't, Critical Role stuff is free. Like, I can go listen to all of it. I don't have to pay a cent. They're getting money from the fans that want to engage and support and help, kind of a thing. So it was a little sad. I was like, there was a lot of backlash against Critical Role, and I'm like, don't be upset with them for being successful. Like, it's okay. But
yeah, I think that
it is a lot of money though. Like, and that spooks people, but that was a lot of money.
It's tapping into a conversation that's happening right now in the world of people who are at one level and they see people that are another level. And your work that you do is no more harder or different than the work I do 40 hours a week. I put in just as much hard work. Maybe I dig ditches. Maybe my work is labor intensive. Maybe my work is not. And then you just see that disparity of what you get to do earns you this.
Yeah.
What I get to do earns me this. And you can't tell me that your work is more important than my work. They're equal. I'm not going to say my work's more important than yours, but it is important. What I do is important. It does affect things. I work for school districts, right? So that sounds like would be a very important thing in this world. And I think there's this, and you got the Jeff Bezos now that are making billions and billions and billions of dollars. And I think before that, when you only had people that were millionaires, maybe the discussion didn't come up as much as about, is there ever too much money? But then you hit billion or you hit trillion, and somehow, some way you start to say, is it too much?
It is, yeah.
Could some of us get a little bit of that for doing what we do? Same job. I'm not telling you to give me a different job or, whatever. I'm just saying, can we get a little bit more of that stuff? So I think that's the conversation that's happening about people looking at disparity.
Yeah. No, it's true. Yeah.
The person that works in McDonald's has a hard, rough 10-hour day and they can barely pay rent.
Yep.
It just, so it's just
no,
crazy.
And I agree. It's we don't need to get we're a D&D
I'm
talk
not saying
show.
There's an answer.
Yeah, we're a D&D talk show, so I mean we could talk about income inequality all day. And I will point out that I do agree. Like, I think there are people that work very hard in the world and do not make enough money. And then there are people where I do not think that Jeff Bezos is working 7 billion times harder than the person who works at a fast food restaurant. So that is what I'll say about that.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way that he's working that much harder than this person who works very hard.
I do agree with your sentiment that if you don't be mad at the person that's successful. They figured out the game. They're playing the game well. They were in the right place at the right time. Twitch made Critical Role. Twitch, when Critical Role started their streaming, Twitch put it on their front page every night that they streamed, like for at least a month. There was a lot of streamers that complained.
Really? I didn't know that.
Day that they had thrown them up front page and built a big part of that community. And so there was a lot of inside support that they got to launch that show, not only from Geek and Sundry, not only from celebrities that were a part of that, but from Twitch going out of its way and pushing it in front of the audience that was Twitch at that time. And then continuing, they were the ones that were allowed to stream to YouTube and Twitch at the same time, something that they
there's always been that weird, you're not supposed to do that, but they're allowed to. So
yeah, they have their own
but
deal.
they're also a top tier streamer, so that's why they're doing that. So
but they made them a top
I don't know.
tier.
They're still they're very good people. They're donating to charity. They're doing a lot of other awesome stuff. But they are a corporation now, and I will say that I've always enjoyed people, but I don't like corporations because a corporation has a very different mindset about what is good and bad. And unfortunately, sometimes you have people that are good people that are in a corporation, but the corporation wins at making the decisions. So
they're built to get more money.
Yeah, that's the problem. But well, we've got a couple of minutes left. I have I'm gonna try and do some campaign diaries of my Dungeon Crawl Classics Hot Springs Island game. But in short, I had a lot of fun. I'm going to prep some campaign diaries. I might live stream the prep for this Sunday's game. Either tonight. It's got to be today because I'm too busy tomorrow. And the game's tomorrow. And then I've been doing some DMs Guild reviews, so I've been reading a lot of stuff because this Minx and Boo thing came out, and then I organized all of my DMs Guild PDFs, and I'm like, I got a lot of good stuff in here. I should talk about this. But you haven't played D&D in a while. Are you playing? Did you get Dungeon of the Mad Mage in?
I did. We played. We're back at it. So it was crazy to be 3 weeks off, 4 weeks off almost. And then to come back in, but it was everybody, jumped back in, had a good time. We're probably ready to go down to the next level. So we're going to get closer and closer
what
to
level
going
are you on
deeper
now?
and deeper. I believe
you're like, why did you ask me?
8, I believe. Okay. I think we're about ready to go to 9. The reason it's unsure is because we went back up and down a couple of times because we skipped. There's ways to skip over.
Yeah.
So we were at 6, skipped over 7, went to 8, then went back up to 7, and now we're going to go back down to 8, back down to 9, or something like that. So it's funny.
It reminds me of like Super Mario Brothers 3 or something where it's like you can take the warp pipes and get right to the end of the game.
Yeah.
But you're that player that's like, no, we're going to go through every level. I'm going to beat every boss in a castle.
100% it.
And 100% it. So
when what's cool about it, what forces us to do it, and I think is a good addition if you ever run this for your players, it's because AC Inc., which we're the franchise of, has ordered us to map Dungeon of the Mad Mage. They want a full working map. So I'm the cartographer for our group, and we're mapping every inch that we can find of Dungeon of the Mad Mage. So it's been pretty cool. Also, what's really nice in there is they do put in plenty of areas for you as a dungeon master to add to it. They'll leave a part on the map that just says open, and they'll say, here, if you want to, you can say this goes to the Underdark. You can say this goes to some other kingdom you want to create.
Oh,
you
that's
can say
cool.
This goes to wherever, or you can just block it off. Just tell your players it's been caved in and move on. So they put in.
I would put
spots.
The yellow tape that says "Do not cross,"
don't cross,
and just a big sphere of annihilation on the other side.
Yeah,
and see how many of them walk into it. So
every one of them.
Oh my god, it'd be so funny.
So it's been pretty good. We've got to fight some ghost naga. There's a certain term for it. I forget. It was like spirit naga or something like that.
Yeah,
they're pretty tough.
Yeah, the bone ones. Bone naga?
Yeah, bone nagas. I think that was some stuff we got tangled up into. So I'm interested to see. And we're starting to get into themed floors. Like this floor was themed for swamp areas, and everything was almost water everywhere, very few dry spots, fungus, big mushrooms and stuff. And then you'll get to one that's like crystals or something else. You'll get to one that's an old dwarven fortress level. So it's kind of interesting to see these different themes of levels we're getting to, and I'm just more and more curious as we continue what the next level is going to look like, or what's the next theme going to be. So you've got to love dungeon diving. You've got to love moving your miniature on the map and doing lots and lots and lots of combat.
I was talking about this with some patrons where they were playing it, and you got to have a good character too, because they went through Waterdeep Dragon Heist, and my patron, he was talking like he had this really cool character, but by the end of it he's like, this is not a explore the dungeon character. Like, I've got social skills that I'm not going to utilize in the dungeon. I've got all these other things that they're like, I don't think I want to play this anymore. And so they made a new character that was very like, I'm going down and I'm
an adventurer.
Yeah.
I'm going to dive down in the yawning portal.
Because I was thinking, I was like, I've got a lot of characters that I'd like to play, but like, if that one's not good for this kind of scenario. So, but you're having a lot of fun with your character, obviously. So
yeah. So definitely make sure you know your group, because it's a lot of. I mean, it's going to be 2 years of dungeon diving. So
that's awesome.
Not everybody into that, but I am. I love it.
I want you to write a book when you're done.
Sure.
Like, 2 years with Dungeon of the Mad Mage by Lucian.
The
all memoirs of an Eric Hokra in an underground tunnel.
Yes.
I love it. Anything else before we take off?
That was it. Doing some preps for the Depths of Duty and the Rise of Delta Green, two campaigns that I keep wanting to play on off nights and may still, dive into some more. And then now, because we're getting Spelljammer, I want to do a campaign that is about the Githyanki War against the Mind Flayers.
Yeah, that would
I
be
think
fun.
that would be a cool campaign to run.
Very fun. It would be very fun.
So keep an eye out for that.
Thank you guys so much for watching the show. This was a good talk. It's Spelljammer Day. I was very excited. And we will be back next week with more Dungeon of the Mad Mage. We'll be back next week with another Saturday morning D&D show. Thank you guys again, and we'll see you all on the next one. Take care.
Bye.